in the women's club. No, actually, when we kick these Bess to the curb, I'm going to join the women's club.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right. And I'd like to say thank you guys for all you do for the community and have been doing for years and years. I've lived here 33 years, and I see what you do for our children at the schools and all of our community groups, and I really appreciate it, and don't think it doesn't go unnoticed. So, also Sandy.
Right here.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for always being generous with the community club whenever I have needed it or asked for it.
That's why we're here.
But you've always been amazing, and I really appreciate it, so thank you. And I want to thank my sidekick, Lainey Clevenger, for all her support and all her help through the last 2 years, because 2 years of fighting this Bess, and we're not done yet. But she's been such a big help, so thank you, Lainey. Okay, does anybody in this room not know what a Bess is? Don't be afraid, Dan. You don't, okay. It stands for Battery Energy Storage System, okay? And these facilities are built to accept energy from the grid and store it during the time of day when it's not needed. So mostly the grid is being overloaded with new green energy from wind turbines and from solar farms. So this is extra power that's coming onto the grid, and if they can store it into batteries and then call upon it later in the day when everybody comes home and switches their air conditioner on at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, then that's the purpose they serve, is to then inject that power back to the grid when it's needed. So they are a necessary, they're a necessary thing to have, but we don't necessarily want them here. And the reason why we don't want them here, there's a couple reasons. One reason is because they're industrial. We are in a rural community. People come here to have animals, horse rescues, animal rescues, raise their children, have beautiful vistas, Sierra Pelona. We don't come here to look at miles and miles of battery containers that are like freighting containers. And I'll get to more on that, but that's not why we come to Acton, and not why we've ever been wanting to live in Acton. So that's one reason. And the other reason is the batteries that are within these containers are fire prone, and they're toxic when they burn. And they contain hydrogen gases like hydrogen fluoride, hydrogen chloride, hydrogen cyanide, which are really deadly. So deadly that the firefighters will stand way back and they'll put water on everything but the batteries, because they want the batteries to burn themselves out and burn as quickly as possible to consume what's in the battery. So the energy and the electrolyte and everything that's in the battery that can be toxic when it burns. It's better to let it burn itself out, because if you put water on it, you're only going to prolong the event, and you're also running the chance of taking some of those toxins down to the ground and then eventually into our groundwater. A lot of you are on wells. We don't need that. So I wanted to go into that we have currently, we have 3 potential Bess trying to come into Acton. The Humidor, the Prairie Song, and the Matai. The 400 million watt Humidor is east of Vincent Hill Arena, right next to it, right next to where the Rangers ride. It was approved in August of 2023, and SORT, which is Save Our Rural Town, and that's the director of that is Jackie Ayer. I'm sure you guys know Jackie. She filed a lawsuit against that approval on September 19th, 2023, so a month after the approval. The county did its best to drag this out. There's a franchise agreement that had to be adopted by the county for all the approvals to be completed for this project. And the judge wanted to wait until all that was done until he moved forward with our lawsuit. So once the county realized that they could stall this, by not putting that franchise agreement in front of the Board of Supervisors. That's exactly what they did. So we went on for about a year, waiting for the franchise agreement to go before the Board of Supervisors, and it finally did, and of course it was adopted like nobody's business. Even though I took a busload of residents there, and we made our comments and wore our shirts, and they listened, but not really. Anyway, they voted, and the franchise agreement was adopted, and then the judge finally moved forward with our trial date and set it for July 17th of this past summer. And just prior to the July 17th trial date, we were invited to mediation with the developer, and Jackie and I and our attorney spent 18 hours going back and forth with the developer and LA County Council, trying to find any common ground, but we didn't. So we went to trial, and we were very encouraged by what the judge said during the trial. He, however, did not rule that day. He had a very full docket. He didn't want to rush his ruling. So he gave himself 90 days to rule. The 90 days are coming up on October 15th, so we've got 2 more weeks, and then we should get a ruling. We were extremely encouraged by what we heard, and the developer was extremely discouraged by what he heard. So we're hoping that we're going to prevail in this case. Pretty sure, but it's not over till the fat lady sings, and I am not singing yet. So anyway, trying to keep notes here so I stay on task. The Prairie Song now is a project that's 1,150 million watts. It's going to cover 70 acres with batteries that'll be stored in 2,035 containers. So picture 2,035 shipping containers covering 70 acres of our A1 and A2 land. And then there's another 30 acres that'll be dedicated toward their own little substation. This project starts at Melinta Avenue, and for those of you who aren't familiar where Melinta is, if you're on the 14th freeway and you're heading to Palmdale, when you look to your left and you see the Golden West trailers, if you immediately look to your right, the other side of the freeway, that's about where the project is going to be starting. And then it'll follow you north along Soledad. It eventually crosses over to the other side of Soledad, and it runs between Soledad and Carson Mesa. So it's very large, and it's right next to the freeway, and it's actually pinning several residents up against the freeway. They'll have the Bess in their front yard and the 14 freeway in their backyard on Tortuga Avenue. So it's not a good location. That's all ag land. It's all agriculture zoned. We think that there's language in the zoning code that prohibits energy storage devices in A1 and A2, but we might have to go to court to negotiate that with the judge. So we'll see. It's not fun, but we have to do it. The project runs all the way up past Forreston Drive, if you're familiar where Forreston Drive is. So it's quite large. It's going to affect a lot of people in the Forreston area, Kentucky Springs area. Technically, it affects everybody in the East Acton area. And it will finish out just below where the humidor is. The humidor is just north of that. So now that's 2 projects. That's a 400 megawatt and a 1,150 megawatt. Now there's a 3rd project. The 3rd project is called Matai, and it is going to be located just east of our Vincent substation, our big substation. So there's a 40-acre parcel there, also zoned A2. That's where the developer is proposing it. This is the same developer that is trying to build the humidor. They had a meeting back in August. They held it at the AB College, which I couldn't understand why they picked that location. It was terrible. But I managed to get 100 people there. And we all wore our Acton shirts or our black. And I think we intimidated them. I really do. I think that all the showing of solidarity and The meeting was run very poorly. There was little opportunity for us to really engage with the panel that was there. The moderator was horrible, treated us like school children. She's never welcome in Acton again, as far as I'm concerned. But it really showed that on a weeknight at 6 o'clock at night, on freeway with construction, rush hour traffic, I got 100 people there. And that showed those developers how much we do not want their project. So, and this is the same developer that is trying to get the humidor passed in court, which I think we're going to beat their pants. So, that's the third one. I honestly don't believe that project will come to fruition. It's supposed to be built in, they're shooting for 2033. I don't think it's ever gonna happen. I just have a gut feeling. I've spoken with the CEO and I just have a feeling that it ain't gonna happen. Anyway. Going back to the Prairie Song, the big one, it's 3 times the size of the humidor. When you add up the Prairie Song, the humidor, and the 200 megawatts that would go for the Matai if it was built, you're looking at more than half of what would be stored in Diablo Canyon or San Onofre nuclear power plants. It's an incredible amount of stored energy. It does not belong in our community. I don't think, does anybody think it belongs in our community? I don't think it belongs in our community. The Prairie Song chose to get their approval not through LA County, but they choose to go to the CEC, that's the California Energy Commission. They have a streamlined process up there that's supposed to help get these projects through. But luckily, it's a very thorough process, way more thorough than LA County was, trust me. And the Prairie Song filed their application at the end of June, and the CEC had to give a determination as to whether their application was complete. If they had all the information they needed, once that application is complete, then the project can move forward under the approval process. Well, they did not find the application to be complete, which I was thrilled about. There was a lot of stuff missing. And one of the things that is required of that project to move forward is an executable and binding agreement with a community benefit. So what that is that they have to have a written signed agreement that would stand up in court to donate to a community group, such as the Acton Women's Club, or Friends of the Library, or our school system, or Sierra Sports, or the Acton Rangers. So, of course, I had everybody on speed dial. I was like, no, don't take any donations from somebody you don't know. And it's a really hard thing for me to ask you to do that, because I know that everybody thrives on donations that are in these charitable groups. But that $500 or whatever they have offered you would be literally throwing our community under the bus. And we would be opening the door for those projects to just bust right on through. So it's not going to be what stops the projects, because I'm sure eventually they'll get some sort of a qualifying contract. They're going after a labor group in Orange County, Los Angeles labor group. And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with Acton? I mean, if you're gonna donate, I would think it would have to be for an Acton group, like a local group. And this is what Jackie Ayer is fighting for, that if you're going to make a community benefit agreement, it needs to be local. And we also want it to be transparent, which means we would prefer to have our community groups represented in one room and sit down and talk about what this developer would like to offer, and so that everybody is aware of what's on the table, rather than the backdoor deals, it was being rolled out as a backdoor deal. People were getting emails saying, hey, if you'd like to meet, here's some dates we can meet with you, and it was kind of a one-on-one thing. We don't go for that, because that's dividing our community up, and we stick together. Our community sticks together. So after that application is deemed complete with all the information it's required to put in, the expedited process with the CEC takes about 270 days. Now, this includes an environmental impact report. So, I mean, that's the one difference between what the CEC does versus what LA County does. LA County didn't do any of that. LA County approved the humidor as if it was a fence on a property, like the same kind of approval, no consideration, no safety approvals, no nothing, which is why we were up in arms. So that is a much better deal at the CEC, and the developers really don't want to go to the CEC because they see it's a more stringent process. That prairie song will be the largest Bess in the nation if it's built, right here in Hampton. The lithium iron phosphate batteries that it uses are more safe than lithium ion, but they're still not. They're safer, I should say. They are safer than lithium ion, but they are not safe, and there's a big difference. Let's see. The bottom line is that the batteries are the main issue, because if there was a fire, I trust that our fire department would put the fire out in a timely manner. I do believe that they could control the fire, unless of course it happens during one of our wildfire crazy events and the winds are blowing and then all bets are off. But the residents that live in that area have very little egress, and it's all on dirt roads. And then it's like, well, how do you evacuate 9 horses, senior horses? How do you evacuate 15 donkeys? How do you get out a kennel full of dogs? I mean, it's going to be such a hardship on those people. And if there's a battery fire, the chances of them closing the freeway are very strong. The chances of them shutting down the metro rail, the Metrolink, very strong. And they would have to probably do an evacuation of, it could be a 2-mile radius, or if the wind is blowing with any strength, they would focus on anybody downwind of the event. If that wind is blowing north, the AV's looking at it, and the AV hasn't paid attention to any of this. I don't even know if they know it exists. And I only fight battles for my community. So if it was blowing south, southwest, or west, then Acton has got issues. So we don't want that to happen. Anyway, we don't want the batteries that they're using, but even if they used a safe technology, because now the developer is, even though I've asked him over 2 years several times to consider a safer battery technology, they didn't want to entertain it, they didn't want to discuss it. Well, I want to discuss it, so I discussed it with LA County, but the developer didn't want to discuss it. And now they want to discuss it, and at this point, I don't want the humidor under any circumstance, because it's industrial, and it will industrialize and change the whole character of that part of our town. So whether they go into a safe battery chemistry or they don't, I'm anti-Bess, I'm sorry. Call me selfish, but I don't want that for my community. So does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry.
Whatever the replacement for Garcia, is he helping at all?
Oh, George Whiteside's?
Yeah.
I had a good phone conversation with George before he was elected. Because he came into office right when all the Palisades fire and everything was going down, I kind of backed off and left him alone, because he was up to his eyeballs and that stuff. But I have a good relationship with George. I've thought about reaching out to him. He's very big on trying to solve the wildfire issue in California. That's kind of a pet project of his, and that he kind of campaigned on that. So I think he's very interested. He was very receptive on the phone when we talked, and it was very humorous, because George spent 20 years being the CEO of NASA or something like that, and then went to Virgin Galactic for several years. And here I was, the old retired hairdresser, schooling him on Bess. And we were laughing because even though he's familiar with battery chemistries, and he knows lithium's batteries, but he's never been familiar with those type of batteries in a large grid scale application where there's millions and millions of watts. So yeah, I think George would be supportive. At this point, I don't know what he could do to help us, but Mike Garcia was extremely helpful.
And Catherine Barger has done care, she's turned out, correct? Was she turned out?
She voted yes with the other 4 supervisors when she could have voted no, and it wouldn't have changed anything, but it would have shown us some good faith.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed. I've always supported her, but I truly feel that our supervisors do not understand Bess and the dangers. I truly feel like LA County Regional Planning, when they approved the humidor, that they did not understand the dangers associated. They do now, and I make sure that everything I get my hands on, I send to LA County, to the team. I get a receipt, and so they're building the renewable energy ordinance update, and they're building the best siting ordinance. And I'm making sure that they're getting everything that talks about dangers or events, fire events, new data on battery chemistries. I'm giving all that to them. So they're way more informed now, and I think they realize after the Moss Landing incident, I don't know if you're ever familiar with Moss Landing, but it's up in Northern California on the coast. It was a Bess that was built in 2021, and they had a couple events that caused evacuations, but they were completely minor compared to what happened in January. January 16th of this year, just following the Palisades and the Eaton fires, they had a huge fire up at that Bess facility at the PG&E plant in Moss Landing. And that thing took off and burnt for several days, and it reignited a month later. But the big news was the wind was blowing, and it blew inland, not to the water. It wasn't blowing to the coast, but it was blowing inland. And it traveled 20 miles. People 20 miles away were feeling toxicity. They were feeling the burning in their throats, in their nose, their eyes. People were waking up with nosebleeds, feeling sick. There's a mass tort lawsuit that's been filed, and Aaron Brockovich is on board. So it shows you how high profile the incident was. But the wind was blowing strong, and it blew that toxic plume right in. 1,500 people were evacuated for days. So it was a big deal. And then there's an environmental area near the facility called the Elkhorn Slough, and that has been tested, and it shows really high elevations of heavy metals, which the type of lithium battery that was burning in that facility had nickel, manganese, and cobalt. And those metals were found in the Elkhorn Slough, which will get into the mollusks and the oysters, and then they'll be eaten by the sea lions and the otters, and the cycle just perpetuates, so it's bad.
Ruthie, if I understand right, when this first started, we don't even get any electricity from these things. Is that
No.
still true?
That's very true.
Okay, and what can people in the town do to help support you?
Well, that's what I wanted to say is I'm going to leave my email information.
Use the microphone.
I'm sorry, I'm going to use my email information, leave it with Nancy. If you would like to help, what you can do now is you can email me, and then I will send you the link for the CEC docket for the Prairie Song. And there's a comment page, and all you do is click on the link. It takes you to the comment page. You put in your name, your email. You can opt to put in your address or not. I would put in Acton and the zip code, and then you make a comment, and then you hit submit, and that's it. It's very easy. You can do it in 5 minutes, and you could make it simple and say, I don't believe these belong in our community. I'm fearful. I'm afraid I'm not going to get fire insurance. I'm afraid my house won't be sellable. This will take our rural community and industrialize it. There's all kinds of things you can point to, and I will help you with that if you need help with that. But we need to flood that CEC docket with comment letters before the public comment period. There will be a public comment period, and they will come here to Acton. Likely it'll be in this room. They'll ask to use this room. And it'll be from 9 in the morning to probably 9 at night. And you can come in person and make your 1-minute comment, or you can call and do it by phone, or you can submit a written comment too. So, but we do need written comments now. And if you think it doesn't help, I've seen what happened in another project where the fire department was sitting down with the developer and the CEC and the fire chief said, we have ferocious opposition to this project. Now, this wasn't our project, this was another project, but I watched those two. And it said, we have ferocious opposition to this project and it's worth noting. So, we need to have ferocious opposition to this project and make it worth noting, so that when our firemen sit down with the CEC and discuss the Prairie Song, that it's all on the table how this community feels about that project. So, we do not receive power directly from these projects. The developers would like you to believe that during a PSPS event, a public safety power shutoff that Edison does during the high wind events, they would like you to think that, oh, well, we're gonna help you with that power. We're gonna have that in the batteries for you. But no, because all the lines that they would have to use to bring that power to you are de-energized by Edison for safety. So, hello, but they don't know that we're not stupid. They think we're stupid. And let me see, Jackie is an environmental engineer. She ain't stupid. And I'm a hairdresser, but I've spent 2 years studying electrical engineering and battery chemistry, and I'm not stupid either. So, you know what? They can't pull the wool over our eyes. They look at the two gray-haired old ladies and they think, oh, this is going to be easy, but nope, not easy. So that power goes to the grid itself. When it does get injected to the grid, it would go to the grid. And yes, we might, through osmosis, get a little trickle of it coming to Acton, but there is no way they can direct that power directed to us. We are not going to directly benefit from the power of that grid.
So just curious, like RX Paris, you know, he's like an AV, isn't he? Like he's always on board with things. Has he ever been contacted, or this is a redundant thing, probably I'm saying?
From what I know, Lancaster City and Palmdale are very pro battery projects because of the revenue. These are big money makers, guys. $2.5 million will go from the humidor, $2.5 million in tax revenue will go to LA County. Not to Acton, not to Acton. No, we get $250 per megawatt a year from the humidor project. That's what they've pledged to us, which is about $100,000 a year. So for the whole community to use somehow, right? That's what they've pledged. But $2.5 million goes to LA County. And LA County is hurting for money right now for several reasons. Fires, homeless, immigrants. There's a lot of projects that they need money for, so they will be welcoming that money if they can get their hands on it. And that's why I don't believe that they want to look at the big picture, look at the safety profile, look at what our community would be subjected to. I want to believe that they're not stupid supervisors, but sometimes I don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. All I can think is that they don't understand the technology. They don't understand the true safety issues, and they don't want to believe that it can be a risk. But when you see what happened at Moss Landing, hello, blinking light, that is like a flashlight shining on a big issue. It was a pivotal point for the energy industry. And I would think that our county would start looking at these things differently, and we won't know how they're gonna look at them until the Renewable Energy Ordinance update draft comes out this fall. And once we see what their draft is going to say and how they're gonna screen these projects, we'll know a little bit more whether they give a darn or not.
Okay, it's the last question, okay?
I just want to make a statement because you mentioned RX Paris, and I don't know if you're aware, she's putting a huge, thousands of square feet building up at the fairgrounds for an evacuation plan.
What?
For what?
Evacuation center?
Right there,
Where is this?
right next to the
In
fairgrounds,
case of what?
in case of something like this.
They've got three Bess projects right now being proposed for the AV. NENAC and Antelope Acres and somewhere else out, I think, in Lancaster, so it's coming.
Have you contacted Aaron Markovich?
Yeah.
Yes?
I actually looked at her face to face on a Zoom meeting, and I wanted to say, why didn't you get back to me? But, this was about Moss Landing. It was a meeting about Moss Landing, and I didn't want to try to shoehorn Acton into that meeting, because these people were hurting and needed their time, but she never got back to me. I contacted her twice. There's no money in it for her at this point unless we as a community sue over an event that happens, then there's money. And that's why she's involved in the Moss Landing one, because there's money, there's damages, so. All right,